Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Creating Your Oasis. This is Brandy.
And this is Candy speaking to you from our Oasis family farm. Welcome and good day.
Yeah, so today we have a really strong message for you all. It is about loving yourself and accepting yourself just as you are and learning to become your own best friend.
Yeah. And none of us know how to do that. None of us. None of us were taught to do this. None of us were taught that it's okay to just be by yourself and be happy in it. No, 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 no. There's been a push constantly that you're not whole unless you're a duo, unless you're in a package deal, right?
Somebody else has to complete you. You are not acceptable alone by yourself.
You are not enough.
Exactly.
You are not enough for you. That's right. You are not enough. There's got to be more to it than you. So it really is. That is how they do it. And that's what we're trying to teach you, is that there are words out there that have been pushed on us that we have taken them in and we don't even recognize we're seeing them and we're doing them. And,
we believe them.
Yes. There's the funniest commercials that are on TV that I see where the woman goes, "Does this make my butt look big?" And he's eating a Twix, shoves a Twix in his face so he can't really tell her the truth. Instead of her not really caring.
Well, you should have been like, "Hell yeah, that's my ass."
Right. That's right. I don't care. You look in the mirror and go, "God damn, my ass looks good in these pants. I'm wearing these every week. These are my new go-tos." That's just it, is that we're always relying on other people to make us feel fulfilled, to tell us that we're okay, to tell us that we're good enough. And the real thing is that all we have to do is love ourselves, right? Love the package that you're in. Recognize you've created this package. Mm-hmm. You're in it. Mm-hmm. This is what you're working with, okay? And now you've got some challenges, right? You've got challenges in this package to learn how to be happy in it, right? And what does that look like for you?
Well, at a young age, a lot of us are, whether we're picked on or if we get in trouble for something when we're little kids and stuff like that,
that's
we're constantly
being, right?
Yeah, we're always being disciplined, on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so the parts of us that we used to let be free, we kind of hide within and we withdraw, and we feel that part of us isn't good, so we don't express it, right? Or mistakes that we've made means that we're horrible people
forever,
and that we deserve to be punished and we should feel guilty and ashamed because of these choices and these mistakes, right? And we end up becoming our own enemy or our own bully. The person that makes us, talk negatively to ourselves. Yes. And go, "What were you thinking? Oh my God, you're a moron." Or, "Oh, you're dumb."
Like earlier, like sending a gift to somebody, they don't respond, and then you're like, "Oh, it's my fault. It's always my fault." How many of you say that? And I say, even in arguments, stuff that you have, it's always my fault. It's my fault. I'm sorry. It's my fault. I didn't have this. It's my fault. I didn't know better. It's my fault. Blah, blah, blah. It really is a training that has been done and incorporated into our American society.
Well, that's because we're not given tools on how to emotionally soothe ourselves, how to cope with traumatic situations, unless you have a really good therapist or a life coach, giving you the words of encouragement and confidence to allow you to forgive yourself and accept yourself for who you are, and to see that those are all life lessons. Those are all things that you are experiencing to learn something from, and to forgive yourself for, mistakes that you've made, and to recognize if you've learned the lesson from those mistakes, because sometimes you can be repeating those mistakes, yes. Right? Such as choosing unhealthy relationships, for people to take advantage of you, and recognize where maybe you have, when you're empathic, like me and Mom, you tend to look inside somebody's eyes and their heart, and you see their soul. And so you see their divinity, and you can see the potential of that person. But it doesn't mean that they're living that
it doesn't mean that person is
they're living out there.
Yeah.
Exactly. You saw like your divine being reflected into back into your eyes, right? You saw your divine self in them, because we're all God, we're all one. And so you saw that version of yourself being reflected back to you, whether you recognize that or not. And you can have empathy and understand, well, that person's their childhood was this and they grew up with this, and we give them these excuses why it's okay to maybe treat you a certain kind of way. And we've had people in our lives, let's say that you couldn't talk to them first thing in the morning because they would bite your face off. And we would just be like, well, that's them. You can't talk to them in the morning, and allow them to be so negative, so aggressive, and give them those excuses. Whereas instead we should have said, no, I don't deserve to be talked to like that. I'm not rude to you and disrespectful to you when you come at me first thing in the morning with a question or response, and never talk to you that way. And so if that's how you're going to be towards me, then I don't need you to have a relationship with you.
Exactly. That's not a relationship.
That
really is an unrelationship,
how you make
right?
me feel.
We're unrelated. We don't relate to one
can't
another.
Relate.
That's right. That
exactly.
is it. We're done.
The way you communicate and I communicate are way too different. And so it's not anything that you've done. It's just this is who they are. And that's how they want to relate and have relationships. And that may not be what's best for you. And so you have to discern between who is somebody who is really worth your heart, you know what I mean? And the type of person that you really are. Are you somebody in the relationship who communicates with emotional maturity? Or are you somebody who attacks and, you know what I mean? As soon as somebody hurts you, you immediately are reactive. You really have to discern what your role is in the relationship, and to discern between the types of relationships you want to have. And a lot of the times, a lot of people, we are quick to blame the other person in the relationship because we don't want to be at fault for things falling apart and going wrong, right? But even in the empathic and narcissist relationship, there is something within us that kept the relationship going, even though we knew they're disrespectful and they're toxic, but there was something that we hadn't learned in the relationship, which is why the relationship was still there. And it may be something that y'all can recognize when you keep finding yourself being in these relationships, that you keep repeating the same behaviors, or you're stuck in the loop. You keep making the excuses for them, why it's okay for them to treat you poorly or to be nasty to you, and then go, oh, well, it's my fault. I should have said this, or maybe I should have said that. And to a degree, we do have some ownership.
Responsible. Yes.
Because we are tolerating it. We're saying, yep, this is how I want to be loved. I want to be loved by somebody talking disrespectful to me because I allow it, because I deserve it. I deserve this because maybe I made a mistake in my childhood, or I made a mistake, in the relationship at the very beginning, and so now I deserve to be punished, and this can be unconscious. You can be so unaware that this is what you're allowing into your life.
Most of the time it is unconscious. Yeah.
Yes, because you're unconsciously, you're yes, I deserve to be treated like I'm worthless because I made these mistakes, and so I'm punishing myself.
Well, and maybe you didn't have a voice when you were a child, you know what I mean? And so you've never learned to express yourself or express your needs, because when you were a child, if you did, it was unheard, or you were punished for that.
Well, because children can't sit there and say, no, don't spank me, that hurt.
Yeah.
And
you don't have to hit me. I get it, right. But
right. And it's sad, it's heartbreaking.
It
really is.
When you look back at it, I don't suffer from so much guilt now because I recognize how I was raised and what I was taught. But when I figured it out, I made sure that I told my children. I made sure I explained to my children what my generation was like and what they really felt. And I did come from a very abusive home when I was growing up, and there were so many things in there, and learning to be a parent after coming out of that and trying to be a better parent consciously, right? I was consciously knew I needed to be a better parent, and not everybody is conscious that they need to do better, right? They just follow that trend until somebody goes, one of their adult children turn around and go, when I was a kid and this happened, it devastated me, and only then does it kind of register with people how your intentions and what you were thinking at the time affected them. And so But recognizing that you can do better and you can change and you can do better and you can apologize and you can live differently,
Well,
right?
you can also express, like, that was not my intent for you to have that
Yes.
experience. This is what was going on in my world and in my life and in my mind when these things were happening, right? And that's what my mom would do anytime there, because my mom was abused, like mentally, physically, emotionally, in all kinds of ways. And so when we were growing up, she would communicate that with us, what her childhood was. And so there is no book on how to raise kids, and she's doing the best she can. But both of my parents grew up very, very,
Harsh circumstances.
yeah, very, very bad. And so there were things that did happen to us as children. But my mom did say, you know what I mean? I don't want you to carry this, and I don't want it to create division between us. I want us to be closer together. So if there's things that we need to talk about that I need to apologize for, she wanted to have those conversations, but not everybody is strong enough to go back into their past
Yeah.
and to pull those out to the surface to feel them all over again, And because it takes a lot of bravery, it takes a lot of strength and courage to bring that up to the surface again, and one, accept that this happened, and then to embrace those feelings and say, ooh, but that's where healing comes from. Okay, healing comes from us accepting that these things did occur and that it is part of my story. It is what has brought me to this moment, to who I am today. And it has made me change the way that I do things in my life, because there was things that I did value and saw were beautiful that I could incorporate to my children's lives. But there were also things that I knew came from damage, from a damaged soul that wasn't intentionally brought down, but there was no way that she could take on the amount of darkness and not, and escape it full on in her life, and as a divine being. Exactly. Yes. So she did have things that unfortunately got passed down, but it takes someone like who she was, that generational karmic breaker, to say, we're not going to keep pushing that forward. We're going to end that here. And this is what we're going to keep bringing forward. We're going to bring that light that you came in with, and we're going to keep fostering the light and the love and the nurturing. And we're going to, not every one of us kids were aware enough to see the pattern and to see that things needed to change, or to see how somebody can come through something that's so dark and still have a genuine heart to still care and to still love and to still be that strong anchor for love, you know what I mean? So, and to say, be brave enough and consciously aware enough to say, this happened to me and I don't want this to happen to y'all. And then I'm willing to, if there were things that happen, I'm willing to, take ownership back so that you're not holding on to this anymore. And a lot of families, they don't have a parent that will do that for them. Sometimes there are things that happen to people as children and their parents completely deny it. They will be like, nope, that didn't happen, that's all in your head, and want to gaslight you. Yes. So that you don't have healing coming from them. Pretty much they're saying, I can't help you with that. There's no healing going to come from me. This is going to be something you have to do on your own. You know what I mean? And that can be very hard as an individual to have to go through it all. Or sometimes your parents have already passed away by the time you recognize that you have healing to do, and they're not there to have those conversations. And I definitely encourage you all that if you have something that comes up, a memory of a moment where your parents may have not been aware that you felt abandoned, or that you felt alone, or you felt that you weren't good enough and unloved, to have those conversations. Be like, I remember when I was a child and this was going on and it made me feel like this, and it made me feel like I wasn't good enough, or that I wasn't allowed to be this or do that. I
wasn't accepted. Somehow, some way, you weren't good enough, right?
Yes.
You weren't lovable.
That there's something wrong with you, and you have to go either have that conversation with that parent, you know what I mean, and if they're open to having that conversation, because you just never know. And if they're not available, to write it out, to write a letter, to find a confident person, somebody who is like your best friend, your partner, somebody who can hold that safe space for you, to let you process it, to say it out loud. Because that's the thing, like, people hold it and suppress it. And in order to release it, we either have to release it through our voice, through that throat chakra, or we have to release it through our tears by shedding the emotion, by releasing the emotion. And the emotion is, of course, it's sadness, but it gets turned into rage, it gets turned into all these other
tremendous negative
feelings.
Yes,
exactly.
It's always like that. And
because it hasn't seen the light, it needs to be released. And that way we can learn to let it go, because we can come to that place of acceptance that this was part of my story, but it's not really who I am.
Right. And that whatever happened during that time, see, because we're talking about specifically this childhood moment, because that's when we learn to love ourselves or
yes,
not.
Right.
Okay? And
based on how we are loved and
yes.
received by our family. It
Yep.
all starts there.
It all starts there, because that's the beginning.
Yes.
That is the very beginning.
These are
It
your
is from
first
birth
partners,
on.
your
That's
first
right.
soulmates, your first loves.
First loves are all right there. And how they treat you and how they respond to you needing something, or
Your
your
emotions.
missteps, anything along those lines, all go to create. Now, sometimes that's innocently done, right? Sometimes it's innocent. Like,
Sure.
I can tell you that my children experienced, I had a lot. I had 4 children. I had 2 boys, 2 girls. And we experienced a lot of poverty. Not as poor as some people in this country are. Definitely not as poor as some people in other countries are. But for the American way of life and the standard, we lived, it was very hard, because even with 2 parents working, we still were unable to make enough money to support. We could eat. There was food on the table. There never was a night when we couldn't eat. There was always power. Somehow we kept power on.
Yeah, basic needs were met.
Yes, but there was none of that. Like, my children never experienced a family vacation. That never happened. And we were doing as good as we could to get them on some of the field trips, but they didn't get to go on all the field trips. They just had a little bit substandard. But we tried in other ways to show them that we loved them and that our family was special and wonderful by the things that we did and how we treated them.
Yeah, but our love was not based on material
No.
things. It was based on the experiences and the memories and the time that we were sharing with one another, because I never grew up feeling unloved at all. I grew up feeling poor because people would point things out to us. Oh, you got a hole in your shoe, you got a hole in your shirt, you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, well, guess what? I can't control my parents' income. I can't control the clothes that I have and I buy, as if y'all buy your own clothes, you know what I mean? And if that's how you're going to judge me, I didn't care to have them as friends, you know what I mean?
That's having a wise child. That's a wise child. That was a wise one, came into the world, right? That wise. A lot of children come in with a hole in their shoe, think, my parents don't love me enough to get me new shoes so I don't get made fun of.
Yeah.
That's an experience that.
And it's also a belief system that you can create for yourself, that can create a future where you are always feeling like you're not good enough. And so because you're not good enough, you're poor. You know what I mean? Those belief systems that generate from that youth, that childhood, creates our reality for ourselves. And it's always about that belief of, am I worthy? Am I good enough? Am I deserving? And people are even afraid to be alone. And that if they're alone, that means that they aren't lovable and that they're not good enough, and that they're, that they're going to be alone for the rest of their lives. And I want to tell y'all that the love that you're seeking outside of yourself has to come from within. It's almost, you got to reparent yourself, teach yourself the love that you need. And we are definitely going to pick this back up with a part 2 to give y'all some tools on how y'all can do that, how to shift out of that feeling of lack of love and acceptance for yourself, and how to regain your sense of worth back, and to reprogram those belief systems that come from childhood.
Yes, and then to become happy with who you actually are, right? And the only way you can do that is once you've learned to love and accept you in your wholeness, right? In what created you.
Right.
So we do need to talk more, but we're going to close this segment out. Appreciate y'all so very much. Hope you're blessed, and be safe out there.
Looking forward to seeing y'all in the next chat. Love you guys. Love yourself too. Big hugs, big loves. Take care. All right.
Damn if that didn't get me super emotional.
I know.